Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? All right, guys, buckle up. I hope you're prepped up because a lot of Americans are about to lose their jobs. Yeah. The vast majority of economists at 223 large financial institutions were surveyed. And they predict that the United States will fall into the grips of a recession in 2023. Yeah. And a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. But we're not going to fall into a recession. We've already fell into a recession. But more than 2/3 of nearly 24 institutions. And this includes like trading firms, investment banks that do businesses directly with the Federal Reserve, expect the U.S. economy to contract in 2023. 2/3 of those 23 firms expect the recession to come later in 2024. Oh, no, you are wrong. You're wrong. Sorry, you're wrong. While 5 believe that the United States will manage to avoid a downturn altogether. And they include Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, and Morgan Stanley. Yeah. So the institutions that predict a coming recession, I'll stop you right there because it's not coming, it's already here. They expect consumer spending to weaken. Because why? Because Americans have depleted their savings. And an aggressive Fed, they won't stop with the borrowing costs, and the banks and lendings and standards are getting tighter and tighter, and they keep printing money and money and money, and they're raising the rates, hoping that inflation will just go away and go back down to 2%. It's not going to happen. So, soaring U.S. inflation, which in June of 2022 hit a recent peak of 9% in annual terms. They want it to be down to 2%, but it was at 9, okay? And it forced the Fed to raise rates at its fastest pace since the 1980s. If you remember Reaganomics, okay? And this was in a desperate bid to relieve price pressures. It didn't work. So the aggressive rate increases have so far only had a limited effect, and I mean very limited. Okay, so with November CPI data showing inflation running at 7.1%. Okay, now remember, they want to get it down to 2%, but that's just not going to happen. Not right now. So an alternative measure to inflation that uses the same methodology as the U.S. government used to measure CPI in the 1980s puts November's inflation figure much higher, like 15.23%. Yeah. So even though inflation has eased somewhat since its June peak of 9%, it's far from enough for the Fed to hit the brakes on the interest rates, which were brought up quickly from near zero in March of 2022 to the current range of 4.25 to 4.5%. So, frustrated by how sticky high inflation has remained despite the rate boost, Fed officials have pledged to keep raising rates and keep them high until inflation recedes to near the Fed's 2% target. So they're going to keep pushing everything so sky high just to get it down to 2%. So, core PCE, which includes volatile categories of food, energy, okay, in November came to 4.7%, more than twice the Fed's target. So, in their most recent summary of economic projections, Fed officials said that they expect the terminal Fed funds rate, meaning the highest level before it hits a ceiling and later falls, to come in at 5.1%. So rates that high will push unemployment up to 4.6% in 2023 from the current 3.7%. And stay at that level in 2024. And this is all according to the Federal Reserve. Most of the economists that were surveyed by the Wall Street Journal think that unemployment will get even worse and peak at more than 5%. So this is why we prep, right? And one of the things that we always prep for is loss of income. Okay, so a review of 2023, the market outlook reports from 10 major investment banks by SMB Law Group. Okay, it shows that the majority are leaning pessimistic, with one of them being Barclays, predicting that this year will be long, hard slog. And Goldman Sachs, which SMB pegged as leaning optimistic with a sentiment score of 6, predicts that the United States will narrowly avoid a recession. Oh, nay, nay, how wrong they are. So JP Morgan, they are seen as moderately optimistic with 7 points on SMB's sentiment scale, is calling for 2023 to be a bad year for the economy, but better year for markets, and a low risk of deep housing-led recession of the type of experienced in 2008. Yeah, so that means they think everybody's going to be in the red. They're going to owe more than what their houses are worth. When a subprime mortgage meltdown spiraled into a broader financial crisis. Because if you remember, if you were a homeowner in 2008 and 2009, you wanted to throw in the towel. So prior to 2020, inflation was seen as all but tamed, but after CV hit, as the government and the Fed, you know, they flooded lockdown, you know, businesses and households with trillions of dollars in stimulus and support, the era of low inflation stopped, ground to a halt. With the money, you know, helped, you know, it did help businesses, okay, because people were able to go out and spend money, and it kept workers on the payroll, and it bolstered, you know, customer spending, and it also led to an inflationary jump in demand as supply chains were crippled by the restrictions and they could not keep up. Okay, so idled factories where they were unable to ratchet up production fast enough to meet the jump in demand, and inflationary dynamic made it worse by labor shortages, as more people who were close to retirement left the workforce permanently amid the pandemic, and as generous stimulus checks kept others from seeking employment. That was the bad thing. So inflation in the U.S., as measured by the CPI, soared from a pandemic era low of 0.24% in May of 2020 to a recent peak of 9% in June of 2022. And in the face of soaring inflation, I hope we never get to hyperinflation, but we'll see. Central banks across the world have hiked interest rates in a bid to cool demand, relieve price pressures, raising the risk of a recession that we're already in. And I don't see why people are not seeing what I'm seeing and what everybody else is seeing. It's like they don't want to see it. But I don't understand why they don't want to see it. The writing's on the wall, man. Do I have to write in permanent marker behind me? I'm serious, because I will. All right, I'm out of here. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping. And as always, fear less. Ciao.